Niger's military ruler, General Abdourahamane Tiani, has met with his counterpart in Mali and Burkina Faso in his first international visit since seizing power in July. Niger's neighbours, Mali and Burkina Faso, which are ruled by military leaders who seized power in 2020 and 2022 respectively, have pledged solidarity with Niger's coup leaders. General Tiani arrived in Burkina Faso Thursday evening for a friendship and walk-in visit with Captain Ibrahim Traore. According to a statement from Burkina Faso's presidency, the pair discussed issues common to both countries, in particular the fight against terrorism and socio-economic development. In Bamako earlier in the day, he had thanked his Malian counterpart, Colonel Semigoita, for the support and determination of the Malian authorities and people to work with the authorities and people of Niger, whatever their obstacles. The three Sahel countries in September also signed a pact that includes provisions for mutual defense in the event of an attack on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of any of the countries. While in Mali, Tiani said the aim of the alliance was to transform the Sahel region from an area of insecurity to an area of prosperity. The leaders also plan to strengthen economic ties, and Tiani thanked his neighbours for standing by his country after Niger's regional and Western partners announced a series of sanctions against it following the coup. Shortly after taking power, Tiani pledged to return to Niger to civilian rule within 3 years. Mali, meanwhile, has indefinitely postponed a presidential election that was scheduled for early 2024. Well, joining us live now to discuss the ties between these three military-ruled states is a professor of international relations and strategic studies, David Awura. We're glad to have you join us on the world now. Let's talk about the recent visits by the Niger's coup leader to other coup overthrown government also. We can also start with the recent visits, which some see as a sort of plan to legitimize his rule over Niger. How well do you think he was received in Mali?
Thank you for having me on the program. It was well received. It was very well received, and the discussions went on very well. They discussed issues that affected, their both countries. They discussed regional security, that is Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, how they cooperate to ensure that no other country, tries to remove them or violate their sovereignty. And more importantly, cooperation to tackle insurgency and terrorism in the region. I mean, that is what is most exciting to me, because we've always argued that regional cooperation, international cooperation between West African states, the Sahel states, is a sine qua non. I mean, it's a requirement for peace and stability in the region, because the terrorists operate in one country and move to another country. But when there is regional cooperation, I mean, that would not happen. So that is the aspect that is most exciting to me. They also talked about economic cooperation and the rest of them. So it was well received, in Niger, and the visit seems, fairly successful.
Well, despite the fact that it seems like they have a good plan for the people of Niger, Burkina Faso, and also Mali, respectively, let's talk about the possibility of returning to a democratically elected government. We had Abdourahamane Tiani saying a few months ago that the military leadership will pave the way to democracy, and he promised to, hand over power for in 3 years. Let's talk about the latest turn of events. Is that possible at this time?
It is possible, but it's not likely. The military leaders of these countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and of course, we have Chad too, they have followed the same pattern as military leaders across Africa have followed since the 1960s. And that is that they would look for a pretext to overthrow government. They will promise to fight corruption and stabilize their respective countries. And then they will refuse to leave. They will sit put and want to enjoy the, the gains of governance. That's always been the issue: Caesarism and authoritarianism. They follow the same path. Of course, you could see that even Mali, which was supposed to conduct election early next year, early 2024, has said that has been postponed indefinitely. The 3 years that Niger talked about is feasible, is achievable, but the likelihood is that when they settle down and begin to enjoy the fruits of office, they don't want to leave, and that is one problem that military rulers have. In a democratic setting, if it is 4 years, after 4 years, elections will hold, and the leader, when he's elected, he continues. If it's not, he goes. 2 terms, he goes. He doesn't have an opportunity for a 3rd term. But when you have military junta, there is no term limit. When they leave is determined by them and their whims and caprices. And that is why it is concerning. But for Niger, it is possible in 3 years, but not likely, given the pattern they have established over the years.
Let's also talk about the general acceptability of coups in Africa. Many actually do not believe that coups can bring about positive change. Doesn't it seem like a contradiction for the pair? I'm talking about the coup leaders in these countries to discuss issues on the fight against terrorism and also socio-economic development, which were some of the factors that brought them into power.
Military leaders can actually, they can do well if they are determined to do so. I mean, Burkina Faso under Sankara, did well. Ghana under Jerry Rawlings did well. And for some time in Nigeria under Murtala Mohammed, we made some progress. So military leaders are able to, do well if they are determined to do so. But given human nature, where power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Military governments are such that there is no separation of powers. Too much powers are concentrated in the hands of a few. And that tends to corrupt them. And they now tend to focus on themselves and their narrow interests. And given the fact that their powers are vast, they almost always use that, for their own personal benefit and not for the common good. That is why it seems that military rulers, do not do well. And really, across Africa, we had many dozens of them from the 1970s. We can count up to 6 that really did well. So if one is to, make general comments on that, you say they don't do well. Of course, their efforts to cooperate to bring about socio-economic development is positive. Let's see how far they go. Over time, they haven't done well, but that does not mean that a few of them that are committed and determined and focused, it doesn't mean that they can't do well. They have an advantage. They don't have a huge bureaucracy like the democratic governments have, large parliament and all that, cost of governance very high. For military government, cost of governance is supposed to be very, very small. And if they are focused, they can do well. But over time, they haven't used that as an advantage to make their respective countries develop.
Well, either a coup or democratically elected governments, we hope that these leaders do what is good for the people of these respective towns. Well, we've been speaking to Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, David Awura. We're glad to have you talk to us at this time. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.